Is this too loud or is this okay? I feel like it's really loud. Good day, everyone. I am Richard Kuan, as Christian was saying, and today we're going to be talking about life after death, which sounds like a morbid topic, but it's more just rigor mortis. Now, a lot of you are familiar with rigor mortis. It's that whole idea of the stiffening afterwards, but I want to take a little different approach at it, especially this phase right here, the resolution. A lot of owners don't know about that. People are familiar with rigor mortis in the sense of movie style, stiff and everything like that. They don't realize that there is a after period, and that is when a lot of clients will say, oh, my dog's still alive, or they'll see post-mortem changes and say, oh, my dog's still alive, and that's something that we want to talk about it. So I'm going to do a brief overview of everything. I know this is going to be a little bit of a reminder, but just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. So the definition of life, a lot of us think about life as this whole, you can have feelings, you have thoughts. It's a very odd thing. But according to Biology Online, the current definition is that an organism can maintain homeostasis. It's composed of cells, undergoes metabolism, grow, adapt, respond to stimuli, and reproduce. So in a sense, when a living being passes away, the cells within the body are still, in a sense, living. They're still metabolizing, growing, adapting, all that stuff. So we're going to think about this as kind of this life after death. It's a very abstract concept. So what is rigor mortis? Rigor mortis, so rigor, and these are Latin words, rigor means stiff, mortis means death. And people are familiar with this, that very stiffening of, you can't pull somebody's arm or something like that. And in dogs, we'll see that, especially people too, but not so often. It's kind of a weird thing to see people rigor. So it's this description of how the body responds after death. And we see it in 4 phases: a delay phase or lag phase, an onset, a completion, and a delay. Okay. So just some muscle memory. No, okay, no one's laughing, I guess. Just a joke, thank you. So just some muscle memory. It's just a reminder, actin-myosin is one of those strongest bonds. And as you can remember, this ratchet effect right here, this myosin and actin, that breaking and reattachment is what causes the muscles to contract, right? So it's the breaking and bonding of actin and myosin that causes that effect. But ATP is required to break that actin-myosin bond. So in a sense, it takes energy to relax, not to contract, right? So talking about these phases, the delay or lag phase, right? This is right after death. The delay phase is the body continues to function normally, as if there's control, there's the nutrition there and everything. And then the onset of rigor is what we're most familiar with, this kind of movement, the contraction and relaxing, excuse me. And it's mainly, we think of it as just contracting, right? And then there's this decreasing ability to relax as that ATP is used up and as this actin-myosin bond keeps breaking and reattaching, okay? That completion of rigor, if we go back, this will eventually come to a point where it can no longer physically contract because it's reached its maximal length or that the ATP has been used up. So it's where the maximum capability, and it can punch through these Z lines. These Z lines, because it's contracting so hard, and it'll eventually cause that completion of rigor to happen. And then this resolution of rigor is when we have the enzymes that break down these Z lines, these Z discs here, and the muscles begin to go into a quote-unquote relaxed state because they can no longer contract. So just to reiterate this whole issue, so you have the delay phase, and then you have the rigor phase, the onset, and then the completion, right, which is a short. You can see how it plateaus, right? And it plateaus for quite some time, and then finally the resolution. So the application of this, and typically we're going to talk about meat industry and forensic pathology right now. So in the meat industry, it's this, if the muscles are in rigor and they continue to contract and contract and contract, and we don't do anything about it, we just leave it, eventually these muscle layers will contract so much and the meat will be very, very tough. And everyone likes a steak that's easy to bite into, not like chewing gum, correct? So what we can do is we can hang up a piece of meat and you physically prevent the muscle from contracting nearly as violently or aggressively as if it were just laying down. An example of this is, So in my undergrad, my professor took because I worked at a harvesting facility, to be politically correct, because we took a piece of meat right after harvesting and we put it into a freezer to delay the everything, to delay the onset of rigor. So the ATP, all the chemicals, everything was in a stasis. And so he brought it into class, and in about 40 minutes after class, no one was watching it, he put it on a projector, set up the margins, and after about 40 minutes, the meat contracted all the way. So it went through rigor at that time. And this was after, the meat had been in the freezer for several days. So it's this thing that we can kind of study and see what's happening. In forensic pathology, as most of you know, if you've taken path, a lot of factors can affect rigor, the rate at which it goes, how fast it happens, how slow it happens, how it's affected. Sometimes an animal will not go through rigor due to certain diseases. And so we can use this, again going back, we can use this to see how the animal died or the environment it was in, and it's very important. So meat scientists or people in the meat industry will typically are more concerned about the onset of rigor and how to prevent it from going to maximum completion, or at least kind of shortening this curve. Pathologists are really concerned about this whole thing. And I'll talk about small animal medicine, which most of us are going to be going to, not everyone, but when we tell our clients about this whole area, but a lot of times we don't educate them about this resolution of rigor, and that's where we're going to talk about. So cadaveric spasms. This is, if you've ever worked at a harvesting facility, you'll see it violently happen right after. It's the abnormal movement, or just the movement of muscles. So if you think about, like when they say a chicken running without its head on, right? That is in a sense cadaveric spasms. If you've ever actually euthanized a chicken through cervical dislocation, where you literally dislocate their spine, you'll see that after a while, after maybe an hour or so, they'll actually start to move violently, but the head is off, right? So is that still living? Well, it's the cells responding to that. In our meat science class, in our harvesting unit, when we beheaded a sheep, a lamb, they actually warned us to brace the feet down because they would start kicking violently. And actually one of our students didn't do that, kind of let up, and was kicked almost to the wall because those legs kept moving. It was that onset of rigor happening. So, but in the small animals, right, we usually euthanize, and in our clinic we use barbiturates. And so you don't see it as violently because it's more of a slow, ongoing death. But you can see sometimes, they call it the death breath, where the chest is still moving, but the heart has stopped. You might see some blood, gums may remain pink, and there are sometimes after movements, but again, not as violent as in harvesting facilities. So owner concerns or doggy concerns. We don't see this as much, but owners may still perceive movement as the animal living, as opposed to death. They might say, a client might say, we've euthanized your animal, they want to bring their animal home to bury. They say, oh, my dog's still alive, I thought you had euthanized the animal. So that's something that they might be concerned about. The shift from completion to rigor, if you've educated them about it, they might think that's stiffening, and they come back because they understand that it's this stiff death. They might come back and see the dog in a different kind of body position, and they might say, and they might call you and be like, oh my God, my dog's still alive. And you had told me about rigor, but my dog is definitely still alive, he's moving. And so I read up a case on VIN where a dog was euthanized after suffering from chronic mammary carcinoma. The dog was brought home, and she heard on the way home, she thought she heard the dog make noises. And then when she was told about the gums becoming gray, all the signs of rigor mortis, the gums never became gray, and then blood was seen from the nose the next morning. She also said she stayed with her dog the whole night and felt that he relaxed. She swore that he was still alive, even after he was euthanized. So that's something that we have to educate our clients on, is that rigor mortis and the onset of it, and then especially the resolution. So how do we educate our owners, right? Rigor mortis is varied on multiple factors, we know that. And then rigor mortis is highly ATP dependent. We talked about that muscle contraction. So the more ATP that's present, the longer it lasts. Decreasing amounts of ATP will cause more severe rigor mortis, okay? And in the case of euthanasia, it may not be as obvious about their rigor mortis onset, but we still need to educate our clients. And then this is also really important, these times. You know, a lot of owners don't understand that rigor mortis, they think that it can be really quick, or they don't know when it's going to onset. So rigor mortis on average, obviously it's different with every animal, is about 3 to 4 hours. This is a small animal, 3 to 4 hours. And it completes in about 12 hours. And after 12 hours, there may be some relaxation. So when owners bring their dog homes, if they don't want to bury their dog quite right away, if they wait a whole day, they might see this. So that's important to educate them on. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Sorry.